This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. It is being conducted on October 23rd, 2014 at Da Vinci Charter Academy in Davis, California. The interviewee is Mr. Dan Lane. He was born in Decatur, Illinois on September 26, 1947. Mr. Lane served in the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam conflict from July of 1965 to February of 1969. He achieved the rank of sergeant. The interview is being conducted by Chris Monheit, Elias Hampton, Ben Gordon, Cole Adams, and Lucas DeBee. Also present is Mr. Lane's daughter, Sarah Lane. So we're going to begin with before enlistment questions, life pertaining to before you chose to sign up with the military. So can you give us a synopsis of your life before enlistment, focusing on details like when you were born, family details, jobs before service, and possibly any other members of your family you have who were in the military?
Okay. Said earlier, I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, which is kind of the Midwest, right in the middle of the Midwest. A lot of cornfields, a lot of bean fields, and basically the city I grew up in, people worked in either the agri-industry or the auto industry, pretty much, and a lot of farming on the outside of the community, obviously. At a very young age, I don't know, between movies and those type of things, and at the time there was a lot of World War II movies and Korean movies, and I also had four uncles who served either in World War II or the Korean War. And so that was part of the reason I had interest of actually going into the Marine Corps after I got out of high school. This is before Vietnam started. I started thinking about this and at I don't know, probably in high school, but not my senior year, before then. And anyway, the Marine Corps probably had the best propaganda, best uniforms and everything, and all the right things. And so that's kind of what moved me in that direction. I don't know that I was a particularly great student, generally C's and B's. Probably my best, I loved history. I took as much history as I could. And I worked part-time all the way through high school, even into junior high, throwing newspapers, that type of thing, and then pushing a ice cream cart and a bicycle, I should say. And then there was ended up working as in the summertime, baling hay. That's pretty easy work to get. And so I was kind of pretty connected to the community, but it's also, that was kind of where my values were at during the school year. For my first 3 years of school, I was participated in athletes, different wrestling, track, football. And my senior year, I decided it was time to take a break. I was going in the Marine Corps. I needed to get in some party time more than I was getting in. So basically, I didn't do anything my senior year as far as that goes. So I had 4 brothers, no sisters. We were from our family, mother and father were divorced at a fairly young age, and my brothers and I were very close. And but I think at our kind of where we were at, that was the other reason this kind of made sense, is because we didn't have the money to go to college or anything on that order. And the other thing was I had a real passion to kind of get out and see the world. And like a lot of young guys, that seems like the easiest way to do it, you know. And so that's kind of the direction I started moving, or was thinking I was going to be moving when I got out of high school.
Can you share with us a little bit about who your parents were?
My parents were basically, my mom and dad both worked in different manufacturing sites. One was a starch plant, The other was an auto plant. They built carburetors for, and father was a farmer. Grew up on a farm. Basically, pretty poor. His parents, or father, had died at a very young. He was at a very young age, and basically they had like about 20, 40 acres or something like that. They grew enough to kind of help feed him, and had some cattle for milking purposes, and then kind of basically they went to school, but they kind of rented themselves out or hired themselves out to local farmers when harvest time or anything like that would come. So that's kind of how his mother took care of that. I think there was like 6 of them. On the other side of my mother also came from a farm family that was further south, but about 30 miles from Decatur, and a place called Taylorville. And they had been in farming for, I don't know, generations, quite a bit of land and things like that. So that's kind of basically where they came from.
And did you have any plans for life before you chose to enlist?
Well, yeah, I remember when I was young, I don't know how much different that is for anybody else, but I mean, it's kind of changed from week to week. At one time I want to be a coach, at one time, I don't know. It's just growing up and different things appealing to me, architecture, a lot of different things, and so,
What were your particular reasons for enlisting?
I like I said earlier, it's just I kind of wanted to I wanted to get out of Decatur. I wanted to see more of the world, but at the time also I knew that the commitment wasn't there as far as Vietnam, but I knew there was a very strong possibility that was going to happen. Like I said, I followed up on history in school and everything, but also current events I was pretty much up on. And I remember President Kennedy making a speech about our commitment to CETO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, and which had to do with South Vietnam, that we needed to be there for them, and everything. So I kind of took that to heart, and kind of because I came from the kind of family I came from with the military and everything, I thought, well, it's, I should probably do something on this,
And did you enlist alongside anyone else you knew at the time?
No.
How did your family and friends take to the idea that you were going to Vietnam?
I don't know. It wasn't Vietnam at the time that I actually went into boot camp, and by the time I got out, there was a huge insurgent taking place from the United States. But June of '65, July of '65, there was still a real question what all this meant. I don't know that people were for, against it, or anything like that, but there didn't seem to be a lot of negative, or or on the other side of it, anything that was really positive towards it either.
And once the word got out that you had enlisted, and possibly others in your town had enlisted, was there any sort of social pressure from the civilian population toward the soldiers that you knew of?
No, not at that time.
What were the general thoughts on enlisting, just as a whole, when you chose to go into the military?
Well, like I said, it felt like to me it was just something that I felt like that I could do. I wanted to do. Like I said, it's impacted by a lot of things. I read history, movies, and everything. So, and family. So it was just kind of just the thing to do. It just seemed to. I don't know how much thought I really kind of gave to it. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting into as far as in the Marine Corps, and I surely didn't know what I was getting into as far as if I would be sent to Vietnam, and it escalated into a major war, and so.
I see. All right, so this is going to move down to the second section of our interview, which is based around enlistment, basic training, and wartime. What were your expectations about basic training, and how did that compare to the actual reality of the boot camp that you went to?
You know, I knew a lot of guys that went into Marines, Army, pretty much, some went in Navy, but just from high school and stuff, and would see them, say after they got done with basic camp, they'd come back to the town, see mom, their old girlfriend or whatever, friends. And so I kind of had an idea because I was pretty involved with sports. I was pretty good conditioning. So I think the biggest thing and the biggest shock I had wasn't so much the physical aspect of it, is more of kind of the brain game, kind of psychological stuff. I got off an airplane like 3 o'clock in the morning in San Diego, and as you can imagine, it's pitch black out, and as soon as we get off away from the rest of the people, or they get away from us, this enlisted officer or non-com comes up and starts cussing and carrying on and everything, and it was like, wow, I mean, if I talk like that, my mother slapped me upside the head. And I mean, you didn't do that, let alone out in public like that, And so it's like, but he definitely had a way with words. And moments later, we were kind of pushed into a truck that nobody could sit in. Well, it was too small. You could sit, a few people could, but basically we were sitting in one another's lap and everything else, and people would grunt and things like that, and they'd complain because he would start screaming, be the drill instructor, because we were making noise and stuff like that, and there's kind of a whole thing of kind of basically started to dehumanize you to a certain point. I mean, it was like all of a sudden you were no longer a young man or anything like that, that you were considered at that time a girl, which was kind of an insult, and of course they used a various amount of names to describe that. So that was, in fact, that was probably one of the nice things they said to us. And but it really, I mean, the way it affects you, people hear that and they laugh, but it's like you're kind of looking around like, nobody talks to me like this. I was the badass on the basketball team or the wrestling team or whatever, and I like to party. Everybody liked me. Why is this guy doing this? So it really kind of screwed with your head, and it was just, I think, the hardest thing of basic, which you think it's another end, is you kind of think you know what's going on, but until you actually get there and start going through it and seeing how it impacts you and everything. We had guys that tried to commit suicide. We started off, I don't remember the exact number, but when it was all said and done, we had just a little over a third of the people we started with. Some of it was due to overweight, but others, they just couldn't make the cut. And so when we actually got through boot camp, like I said, there was at some point you start feeling like you're, oh, I'm a Marine, and or I'm going to be a Marine, and they intentionally do you like that, because they take you and they start you off with the first day you're there, and you got a utility coat on, pair of utility pants on, pair of boots. You don't blouse your boots, so they're just kind of hanging down. You got to button the top collar of your jacket. It's all wrinkled, your hat's all wrinkled and everything, and anything to remind you of civilian life goes into basically a ship back home. I mean, everything. And you're given a nice haircut, and whether you need it or not. In fact, I thought I was going to beat the whole rap, with the haircut and everything. And I get my hair burred off every so often, I was playing sports and stuff like that. So I thought the day before I'd just go down and have them shave my head, basically with the clippers. And so it was kind of like a burr. It was real short and everything like that. Didn't do a bit of good. You still had to pay a quarter. They charged you, and then they got in there, and they just felt like they was pushing as hard as they were. And there was probably, I don't know how many guys in front of me before I got it. So those clippers are really hot. It felt like you're just peeling the top of your head off. And so it's like I said, it's really kind of screwing with you all the time. But in some ways, it was kind of building you up gradually, because as you went along, say week by week, and you progress. Like for instance, when we went to the rifle range, when you got done there, you got to blouse your boots. Just before that, I think they started wearing, starch pants and shirt, so you're looking more kind of not so wrinkled. You're looking more together and stuff like that. And but it goes all the way through to when you graduate. Your shirt's starched and everything. It's unbuttoned, that first button and stuff like that. And the drill instructors call you Marines, and it's like, man, it's like I did it, and you felt, you feel pretty powerful. And probably over the next, after I got out of boot camp, I went into training, infantry training, for another 4 weeks. And you feel like you're pretty hot stuff, And so that's kind of where there was nothing, I think, that surprised me other than the harshness of the kind of the way they really just screwed with you and stuff. I think the worst thing I ever went through is we were in a bathroom and somebody made a noise and they had way too many people in there. I had a towel on like everybody else, and somebody said something or did something, and their thing is, okay, girls, you want to talk, you want to make noise and everything like that, flush the toilets. And the toilets ran over on the floor, and immediately had you, whatever it is, you jump down on the floor, roll around here and there. Well, that sounds pretty bad, but it's even worse than that, because if you think about it, how long are you going to have that towel on? And I mean, it was just downright humiliating, and you got somebody's rear end in your face or whatever. I mean, and it really was. It was to try to break people, just to get them out, sort them out, get them out of there. And like I said, that was probably, I don't know, I'd been there about 2 weeks when that happened. And that was just, it was like, oh my God, what have I done? I got on the wrong train or something here, So, but anyway, I got through it. Yeah, so.
And did you understand why they were treating you like this at the time, or did that only come to you afterwards?
I think I kind of had an idea, but I didn't clearly understand it. But I think as I went through the basic camp, I started getting a little more clearer understanding what was going on. Because Vietnam I went in, they had just landed, the Marines. In fact, what would end up being the outfit that I went in was the 3rd Marines. And they had just landed around the Da Nang area in June, just before I went into the basic. And they would bring in every so often an article out of the paper or out of one of the magazines at the time. And, hey, these Marines here, and look at them, they're really, they're doing a great job and all this stuff, So you kind of started understanding that there was a purpose of this whole thing. And it was kind of to give you that kind of strength, inner strength, more than anything else, to go on and not quit,
I see. And were there any issues or incidents within the chain of command that got your attention, as in, I suppose, insubordination of any sort that stuck out considerably during your time in boot camp?
Not really. I mean, I was kind of expecting the worst. I didn't know what that meant, but, it's like, you're going to hell. So what's hell mean? Not good. We knew that.
So, in your opinion, then, in this proclaimed hell, what was the hardest part of the boot camp? What was the hardest sort of things they were having you do?
Well, like I said, most of the physical stuff wasn't all that big a deal. We did a lot of physical stuff, a lot of running, obstacle courses, all this stuff. But the big thing is like I said, it's just, just kind of screwing with your head more than anything else. And it kind of get frustrating. I mean, at some point, you'd make a mistake, and the whole idea to begin with, you were never going to do anything right. So, for example, you cannot use the word you. It's spelled, to me, like Y-O-U. But they inferred we were saying E-W-E, like a female sheep. So, when you first get into boot camp, you don't know anything. And so the drill instructor talks to you, and you reply back to him, and he said, "You, sir." Well, geez, man, you just thought we'd call his mother or whatever, And I mean, it'd be all over you. And then you'd apologize to it, and then the next thing you know, the guy was all over your case saying, "What, are you in love with me? Are you gay or something like that? What are you doing here? I mean, it just stuff like that all the time. And if you got a letter, sometimes they would have people read them and stuff like that, or they would smell perfume on the letter, and of course they would taunt these guys. Oh yeah, I seen her last night, and all this stuff, and everything. But they would do anything and everything just to screw with you. And like I said, if you made it, fine. If you didn't, that was fine with them too. It was just part of the process.
Had you ever been out of the United States before you chose to enlist? And if you had, did this experience at all help with the enlistment process and time in boot camp?
No, I'd never been out of the country.
Do you remember the 1965 event in which the late President John F. Kennedy initially initiated the war? And can you tell us anything about that event?
I do, but it's just like, it's pretty vague. I knew they were sending advisors over there, and it talked about up in the ante and stuff like that. And like I said, I remember listening to it on a Sunday morning news program, talking about it. And but I was still in high school. I mean, I was just kind of bits and pieces here and there. Some things kind of stuck, others, they didn't. I had more interesting things to do at the time, I thought.
So in your opinion, now, and as you may recall at the time, what was the idea or the intent behind Lyndon B. Johnson's deployment of troops into Vietnam?
I felt at that time that, which was the thing that everybody was selling, was the fact is that communists was going to spread, that if South Vietnam basically fell, there would be a domino effect, and it would go on to the Philippines, etc., the whole Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia, and all that. And we couldn't afford to do that. And it's just, and it was only, I mean, I wasn't in Korea, and I wasn't old enough to remember anything about it. But I do remember my uncles talking about it and everything, and we're like 14 years later. So it wasn't so much us going to it as much as the other people, like my mom and uncles and stuff like that had to be scratching their head. We just got out of World War II. We just got out of Korea. Now we're talking about engaging in another major conflict, And
can you tell us where you were stationed over the course of the war?
Over the course of the war, yes. I started off in basically Da Nang, in the Da Nang area, and I was with Bravo 19 at the time. That's B Company, 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, and the 3rd Division. And I spent my first 13 months in pretty much that area. And then I went. We went to Okinawa. We got shot up pretty bad and everything for the whole summer and spring, and we had a lot of loss. And so we were sent to Okinawa to regroup. So we were there for a short period of time, and then I decided that I was going to extend myself, and I did. And when I extended, instead of staying with who I was with, I ended up with another company. It's a 3-9 Mike company. And so I went back, and then we were basically all around the demilitarized zone, Khe Sanh, Razorback, I don't know, everything.
And do you recall actually any details about the exact day you chose, or not that you chose, but you were ordered to depart for Vietnam, and what occurred on that day?
The day that I departed for Vietnam, yeah. Let's put it this way. I went to, I flew out of Chicago coming off leave. I knew I was going to be in about a week or two of a kind of a transition type of school to kind of familiarize us with the country, Vietnam that is, and some of their customs, cultures, that type of thing. And then also shots and everything like that you get before you go overseas. And, I didn't think anything of it because we were still going out on R&R. It's, and I'll read this in a minute. The reason I brought this is probably is about as close as it can get to describe how I feel. And then I was standing outside the barracks, dressed in a uniform, had an M14, had a sea bag, and I'm waiting to go. And I don't know, we stood there for waiting on the trucks to pick us up for a couple of hours, several hours, I guess, actually 3 or 4 hours. And I don't know, there's people there you knew and everything like that, but then you start thinking about things. And I put together this writing. I did this a long time ago. Actually, I think I was kidding around with you the other day, but in reality, I do have an issue with post-traumatic stress. And when I was going through that, one of the ways is just trying to understand what had happened or how I felt and everything. This is one of the writings I did. It is late fall, December in Southern California. The day is very hot. We are crowded into a trailer that resembles a cattle car. We're dressed in green fatigues that are heavily starched and pressed, with black boots and a helmet weighing down our head. Innocent eyes staring off into emptiness, and others are darting around the trailer. The drivers start the engine. They belch a foul odor as the motor turns over. The trailer shakes and my body trembles. The air is filled with fumes and my eyes burn. There is a jolt and a jerk as the driver shifts gear. We are moving. I look around at the young boys who look the same. Fear and anticipation replace the confidence of yesterday's heroic claims. They all look like Marines, all green with their sea bags containing their belongings, an M14 rifle barrel resting on their shoulder. It is a reflection of me. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to expect. Would it be my destruction, or would I be captured or tortured? My mind raced. Would I ever return home? Could I kill, or would I falter and be killed? The idea of killing still didn't register in my mind. It was a word that had no meaning, and when spoken, it only seemed to apply to me, my own death, pain, and no longer existing. We rock and bounce as this trip continues. I need to control myself, the fear that is invading me. The cattle car is no different than what is used to haul cattle or livestock. The only exception was our cattle car had a bench to sit on. Maybe another exception was the cattle ended up in a slaughterhouse. That's where they are killed and dismembered. Cattle must really be stupid. This is a real head buzz. They are fed, nurtured. One day they are separated from the herd, put on a cattle car. Your nose is in someone's butt, someone's nose is in your butt. What can they be thinking as they are being herded off the truck at the slaughterhouse? How bad can it be? Maybe they just don't think, or they don't know and accept their fate. The cattle car halts with a surprising jolt. We all pile out on the hot tarmac. As a non-com, a corporal or sergeant screams at us. We get into formation, standing rigid and straight. For a moment, we are distracted from the future as commands are being shouted at us. We respond without thinking and are marching in columns and twos. My eyes are fixed on the guy in front of me. Although we are in step, if he would misstep, I would stumble, maybe fall. I don't know what I can do. I just want to rethink my decision. A voice inside screams, "It's not too late. Drop your bags, rifle, and run." I keep marching, look at the green helmet in front of me. The column is moving towards a dark cavern. The snout of the silver monster is almost out of view. Its mouth is wide open to swallow its victims whole. But it lies still and patient as we march in. Our eyes are locked in on the helmet in front of us. No veering to the left or right. All move in step. No one breaks. We just keep marching into the monster's mouth. We all must know that something horrible is going to happen, but we march on. I feel weak and faint. My legs are numb. God help me to be strong. Damn, I want to get out of here. But I'm just keep marching in this monster's belly, the tomb of no return. Like cattle, stumbling along, one following the other. Not sure what awaits us, just stumbling along. We're all sitting in the belly of the C-130. No windows and dim lights. Oh, God, I'd do anything you want. Please don't make me go. Is this fucking real, or is it a dream? What will my mother say if I just run like hell. Will she understand? How do I explain this to my brothers, uncles, and friends? I just sit frozen in my seat. The beast closes its mouth. The engines cough and rumble and roar. The beast shakes as it comes to life to claim its cargo, and I tremble. My chest is in a knot. My breath becomes shallow. There are jolts, bumps, and we're rolling. Faster, faster, and faster. The smell of fumes, sweat, and fear are heavy in the air. The roar of the engine is deafening, but the jolts and bumps have disappeared. Almost 24 hours later, with one fueling stop, we are descending for our last stop. Everything is a blur. All I can think of is not returning home, dying and lost forever. The plane descends rapidly. It bounces a few times and rolls to a stop. The faces of men have changed. Tired, anxious, and fearful. Eyes are darting around, trying to recognize something. The ramp opens. Foreign odors invade our nose. The heat burns our lungs as we stumble onto the tarmac outside the plane. We know not what to expect, but we don't feel good about the possibilities. A sergeant calls us to attention. The officer of the day stands looking us over. He has a clipboard in his hand. His face reveals no feelings. He could have been an executor. His eyes roam over us like we are cattle in a pen waiting for a stamp of acceptance before the slaughter. A slight smile creeps over his face as he nodded with approval at us. Then the sergeant lifts a clipboard and shouted out our names. We had unwittingly been herded into the slaughterhouse, Vietnam. So the reality was when I stood on that tarmac, it was a whole different feeling. A lot of emotions, maybe you can, well, my writings has tried to exhibit, fear of like, how am I going to make it through? Am I going to survive? And for the first time, I was really going to be away from home, but I was going to be away like over 10,000 miles. And there's no way back. There was an ocean that separated me and this country. And so when I landed in Vietnam, I wasn't real excited at that moment. All that Bravo and everything else had kind of disappeared real quick.
Thank you for being willing to share that with us. Can you actually tell us when exactly you wrote that?
It's been about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you. So to return us to having landed in Vietnam, upon entering Da Nang, what were your thoughts? Da Nang, I'm sorry.
Yeah. One of the things is I think that there was kind of immediately there's fear, and then there's a kind of overcoming emotionally of just numbness starts setting in. Just survival mode more than anything else. I mean, you don't know anything, but it's just like, I got to keep it together. But the thing also was everything was so foreign. The country was a third world country. I just remember getting on the truck to go out to where my battalion was at that I was assigned to, and there's rice paddies all over the place. The one thing that just kind of they remember more than anything else, and they get off is the heat and the smells, because it's just the incense, the fish, the different things that they use for cooking or whatever's in the air, But it's just to me it was nauseating, and a lot of guys I think it is,
And can you tell us about the people who you were stationed with while in Vietnam?
Well, while I was with 19, and this is kind of hard for me to understand. First of all, when we were in there, about every couple of weeks to a month, somebody was always leaving, somebody was always coming. And so when I first went in there, although I kind of started getting, I wanted to, you want to meet people, but the one guy most people don't want to be around is the new guy, because the new guy doesn't know anything, and the new guy is probably one that's going to step on a booby trap, and so everybody wants to stay away from him. The other thing is, you figure he's going to get killed, so you don't want to know him. So you don't want to go through all those emotions and everything. So you kind of separate yourself from them, and it's a but as time goes on, and you kind of you're out in the field and stuff, you start getting acquainted with the guys and a little bit more, and it's probably because it's the situation you're in. At night you're up on a perimeter. If you're not out on a perimeter, if you're not out in the field, or excuse me, if you're not on an ambush or something, and so in that case, a lot of times before it gets real dark, guys are talking and stuff like this, and at some point, I don't know. I mean, there was a couple of guys, but in particular, it was like encouraging one another. I mean, he didn't say like, "Oh yeah, you're going to make it," or anything like that. But the encouragement came from was listening to the same stories about home every night, over and over again, and it was kind of the hope that you were going to get back, and everybody. And then they always talk in the sense that like, "Well, man, we get back, we're going to have to get together, we're going to have to do this, and this and that and everything." So there was this kind of a vision that it's possible that you might make it out of this in one piece. And so some of the people I knew, it's strange enough that I felt kind of close to. There were, we had some people that they were wiped out, killed right off the hand, or something happened to them. And the more that happens, the less emotionally involved you get with people. It doesn't mean you won't trust them to a point, but there's a kind of a detachment that you feel, because if you let yourself feel that it's going to kill you, because you'll get mixed up in emotions, you'll be not focused on what you're supposed to be doing, and it's not like you can get time out and go somewhere and okay, I'm going to kind of just get rid of all this stuff and maybe talk to somebody about it or whatever, and maybe come back in a month or so or a week or two. And I had a few friends, but for the most part, like I said, it's pretty much you're there, You're just trying to get from one day to the next and hoping you make it,
Yeah. So on the subject of one day to the next, can you describe, if it's even possible, what a day in the life during your time in Vietnam was like?
Yeah, Vietnam, I mean, if you go from where the DMZ is down to the south, I mean, you may know this already, but there's a monsoon that starts in the late fall, and it starts raining, and basically it doesn't stop until springtime, and hard rains and stuff like that. Now, the reason I point that out, because I was in basically the infantry at the time, and then went on into recon later on my second stay. So it's kind of hard for people to kind of really understand this, but if you can understand being wet all the time, what that does to your body, what that does to your feet, how that makes you feel. The other thing, you're out there, and because you're going through all this, and at the same time, somebody's going to be shooting at you or not, you always got that on your mind. And one day it was pretty much about the same. And we were pretty much in the field almost from the time I got there till the time we left. We just stayed there. We'd come in once in a while. They might let us take a shower or something like that. At one time, we got into some bad water after a real big battle. And the water had, like I said, it was bad. Everybody got dysentery from it and was sicker than a dog. And another one of those things that was very humiliating, but somehow you just keep going on. Because if you look in a sea ration pack, you got one little roll of toilet paper. Now you can imagine being in that situation. There's no shower, there's no toilet or anything else, and you're limited on how much. And it was like the whole company. They left us in the field like that for about 30 days before they finally came in, and they gave us some medicine. It was cleared up overnight. And why they didn't do it before that, I don't know. But the thing was, We lost, I mean, obviously the weight loss at that time, I think I lost about 25 to 30 pounds just because of that. And then you go into the hot season, you're still in the field, but now all of a sudden, there's a lot more movement. There's a lot more stuff going on because basically, as we used to say, Charlie owned the night, we had owned the day, and basically every night, say 2 out of the 3 nights, you were out on an ambush. You were waiting, and so were they. And so it was, like I said, you'd sit there all night expecting something to happen, and sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. The biggest thing was also a day, and when you're in the field like that all the time, because the Viet Cong used guerrilla war tactics and things like this, and that was pretty kind of dominant in my first stay there. And basically what you ran into was booby traps, snipers, and things like that. It was hard to identify where the snipers are coming from. The booby traps, obviously, if somebody trips it or something like that, there's nobody there, and so it was constantly as a result of that, of seeing somebody being wounded or killed, and so again, it gets back to this whole thing of detachment, because you were seeing this so much, and there was basically nothing I really ever expected, and I didn't know what to expect, I guess. But it was just like, nothing prepares you for it. What you get into, and I think in some ways it's as bad as all the other things that go on. The fact that you live in the kind of environments you have, and you can't get clean, and stuff like that, shower and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of a combination of all that stuff.
See, and during the day, on what may have been the rare but occasional uneventful days, was there anything that the soldiers would do to pass the time when they weren't out on patrol or busy in any other sense?
Talk. It's more of that than anything else. Just talking. If you got an ambush, you can't talk. If you're moving on an operation or sweeping an area or something like that, you can't talk. So it's, so when you have the opportunity, you talk. You find out what's going on and everything. Unfortunately, a lot of times, it was like, that was so-and-so that was killed today, or something, so-and-so that got hurt or whatever, so it's just part of it,
And were you ever serving under officers who ordered you to do things you disagreed with, or did you ever have any confrontations with any of your officers?
I had some serious problems with some of the things that were going on. No matter how right or wrong I thought the war was, I came to a place, our division, and as well as everybody in Vietnam, and we were doing search and destroys, and I had a hard time with that. And basically it was, destroy everything that's there, try to find out what you can. And that in itself, the idea was originally was, well, you'll find these people and they'll send them back to Saigon and intern camp or something like that. You'll throw them out of their home and everything like that, and so that's where they'll stay till the war's over. And this is all these people had, and all of a sudden you just take it from them. And the other thing that comes into play is that because of the anger, the emotions of loss, that some people reacted in some really horrible ways. And the thing was, the search and destroy, that type of strategy came out of Washington, D.C. It's not something, we just decided to do. Because before we were doing that, we were going around and, I'm trying to think of what they called it at the time. But anyway, we were trying to make them our friends and get information off of them. They sent a bunch of us to Vietnamese school, learn some language and all this, and that happened. That went on for about a couple months, and then they said, "Oh, okay, we'll just go out and kill them all." To heck with making friends out of them. I mean, that sounds kind of off the wall, but that's how quick everything changed. It's like one day they were doing this, and the next day they're expecting to go in there and burn these people's homes down and everything like that. And I seen a lot of horrible sights that, as a result of it. And I seen people, I know it impacted me, and I know it had to impact them after they got back. I know there's people there that, they killed somebody. It was a child or it was an adult, but generally it wasn't young. It wasn't somebody who was be fighting you. And it was just their kind of, they would say something about it, but you could tell the uncomfortableness with it because it was like they were trying to make it sound like it was the right thing, but you could tell just the way their voice was that they didn't really believe that. They were trying to convince themselves what they did was right. And at some point, it's like there's that, that horrible feeling that because you went to this war, you're going to hell, and you will never come back because you're there now, and you'll never come back no matter when you come home. You're lost, and it's pretty bad.
On that subject, it's been commented in the past that it was difficult to distinguish the Viet Cong from the Vietnamese civilians. Can you make any comments on that?
Well, that's part of the dilemma, I think, with the war in itself, because the same guy that you would be, say, talking to in the daytime, trying to get information off, or he'd be at the laundry. If you were back in the rear, he might be the person selling you, cleaning your laundry or something like that, and or it might be some kid, man, begging for food or something like that. And next thing you know, he's a sapper, and he comes in with a load of grenades or dynamite or something like that, and they're set off. And it's like you don't know who to trust, and that's part of the problem. I mean, no matter how horrified you are with the war and what's going on, the other side of it is where do I stop? Because I don't trust anybody over here. They're all trying to kill me, and so it's really hard to distinguish, because it didn't matter if it was women, it was young kids, young men, or whatever. In a lot of cases, that's who it was that would be bringing us in. I mean, a lot of the young men would be out on the ambushes trying to catch you, or something like that. But this other stuff is civilian population. A lot of times was doing the booby traps and stuff like that. So I first went over there. I went through the school and everything for about a week or two and everything. And I was like, I didn't fear, but I kind of figured, there was a line drawn, and all the good people here and all the bad people there. I seen it in the movie. I knew it was true. You always knew who the bad guys were. You always knew who the good guys were. And that wasn't the way it was in Vietnam. And I remember when I first got there, before we started going out in the field, I mentioned like the laundry truck. There was some young boy up there that, I'd kid around with and stuff like that. I'd see him out on the dirt road or something like that, go out and get something or whatever. And, he was like 7 or 8 years old. He wasn't that old, And, we went out, and I heard after we'd been out that, hey, that so-and-so kid, somebody that came back that had been wounded, said, he blew himself up and a bunch of guys, And so it's like, I remember looking at him, I was thinking like, before this all had happened, it's like, to me, it's like, that could have been my brother there. I just thought the best, that this guy is, they're wanting to be rescued from these horrible people up north and everything, and we need to take care of them and protect them and everything. Only to find out that a lot of them were, waging a war on us too, And they didn't have much choice. That's the other side of the story. That's why Vietnam is so complex, is because a lot of these people were forced to do these things, or lose their lives, or family members' lives, or whatever. So it's like you don't know. You don't know what motivated them, but you do know one thing: you can't trust it, because it might cost you your life, or one of your comrades your life.
So if you're willing to share it, What was the most vivid memory that you kept from that war?
I think the most vivid would be I was out on we were out in the field. We were down in Da Nang at the time, and when I was we were. I'd been probably around about 3 or 4 months, and I mean, you kind of you don't get used to it, but okay, you're getting shot at, or people are stepping on booby traps. It's just like I got to be more careful and stuff like that, and hope I don't get hit and stuff like that. But like we were sitting around that morning, we were getting ready to take off and to start to sweep for the day, and one of the guys, or a couple of guys, were going home. So we're kind of BSing them and everything like that and everything. The only unfortunate thing that the 3 guys were going home were all going on this patrol, and it was more like kind of a scouting mission. And when they did, they went off. We were kidding them, about getting back in, because actually when they came back in, they were supposed to get on a helicopter when the food supplies came in, and they'd be gone. They're going back home. But as what happened, we were sitting there for a while. We were waiting for, get some time. They were going to come back and let us know what was going on out there, talk about it, and then we were going to proceed. We're hearing this stuff over the radio, because I was sitting at the time right next to the radio for the company commander and everything, just kind of talking with somebody else. And anyway, this conversation's going on with the radio that they had spotted somebody and they were proceeding after them. He looked like they described me, coolie hat, black pajamas. It looks like he has a weapon, can't tell for sure. We're going to go after him to make sure. Well, so they're pursuing the guy, and at that time they didn't know it, but what they were doing was going into an ambush. And they got into it far enough that basically we found out later it was a regiment, which is a pretty good size amount of people. And I say pretty good size because our regiments, their regiments don't actually match up as far as numbers. They do it differently. It's just their structure. But still, you're talking about somewhere a couple thousand. And anyway, we can hear the firing. They're telling we're hit. We've got guys down, and they're talking about this, and and there's just mortar rounds coming in. They're asking for assistance and everything else, and so the lieutenant's trying to get a fix on this and everything. And I mean, this is just all happening. It felt like it was going on forever. And it's kind of like a radio program going on. You're listening to this story play out. The only thing is people when it's actually happening to them. And as they got to the place, all of a sudden it just kind of, the radio went blank, and it came back on, and this guy named Tex, and he said he started talking to his mother, and he started saying, he said, "Mama," he says, "I want some ice cream." And it sounded like he was crying. And he said it a few more times, but as he was saying that, you could hear the other guys being shot. There was no return fire, but you could hear a single shot where they were making sure they were dead and everything. Obviously, we went out, and the rest of the company followed us out and everything, and then we got hit, and this went on for like 3 days. We were just kind of stuck in this thing. We didn't move 1 inch one way or the other. Ran out of food, ran out of water and everything. The people around me that were being killed, or wounded, and it just it was probably at that time the most horrifying thing, because it was the biggest battle I had been up to then. I mean, it was like the whole countryside was just artillery coming down on us and everything else, and all kinds of small arm. I mean, it's just like it's just like the whole side over there where the ambush was, just the whole place is just lit up. And if you ever seen a rifle fire, especially as it starts getting a little darker, it's just a light coming out. But it was the whole place, just all these little lights firing off, just bang, 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 one after another, And so that, and I would say it's kind of hard to say because the other one was in Way in '68 when I had returned, and it was right in Tet season, and I came from the 26th Marines from Quezon over to Recon, and basically we went out. We'd been out for a little bit, and we started having sightings of what we were pretty sure was North Vietnamese, and we called in artillery on them. There was like about 8, 10, and we didn't want to give our position up because I say recon, so we're moving with 4 to 6 people. At that time it was 6, so we're not looking to go out and confront if at all possible. And anyway, so kind of the whole day went like that. We were just seeing them all over the place. Now, unknown to me at the time, this was the beginning of the fall of Way. These were the same guys, and there was 10,000 of them. There were 20,000, I can't remember if the numbers right, but they basically overran Way and held on to it for several days. But anyway, so we got under the bush, and I was pretty good at, I used to call snooping and pooping, and it was just like I could hide pretty good. And I could walk very quietly and stuff. So, and I expected the people that I was with, and I was the platoon leader at the time, sergeant, and I kind of expected everybody to be prepared, that there were so few of us that everybody had to know what everybody else was doing. And there's no question, whether it be the medic or whatever, you needed to know how to do it, because I may be laying there with my throat shot out or something like that. Somebody's got to call in, get a medevac out or whatever. And so anyway, we set in for the night. We call in. What you do every night is you call in your artillery, and what I mean by that is you give them certain coordinations, and it's all encrypted, but you give it around your area. So like if something happens right now, you give them a call, bang, they just can turn it on. In a minute, you can adjust very quickly. So it was just pretty black. I don't know, it was about 9 or 10 o'clock or something like that. And I noticed this on this hill. On the other side of where we were at, there's just looked like a tank light, kind of moving back and forth and everything like that. And it was coming right across the hill we were on. And so we were like this low bushes, probably waist high, and that was about it. I mean, that's just the way everything was. It was very difficult to conceal yourself. And so when we called in, we said, hey, we got a tank over there that's shining a light on us. And I said, we know we've got, basically the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese out here, and they're regulars, and you need to check that out. So they're checking it out, and that light's still going. Next thing I know, the whole field is just filled up. There's line after line after line after line after line. It just seemed to go on. And I mean, I don't know how many it was. It could have been 50. It could have been 100 in each one of those lines. But they were sweeping. They were coming up towards us. They had an idea where we were at, but they wasn't for sure. My guess is they were behind us also. But we're sitting there, and I call back in, and I said, look, we are got a ton of them out here right now. I need you to bring in them artillery. And who in the hell's got that line? I'll turn it off because they're going to find us. And he said, well, we're getting ready to call you. We don't know who that is. It doesn't belong to us. So they either had a truck or a tank up there with this big searchlight on it. And like I said, they were trying to just flush us out. And then they started banging on stuff and bamboo, their weapons, whatever, just trying to get us to go, to jump up and run. And so the whole night was spent like that. There was time when the fire would stop, people would walk by me and stuff, the North Vietnamese guys. I mean, I could literally just reach out and slap them if it wouldn't be very smart, but they were just that close. And I don't know how we did it. We brought the fire in about 25 meters from us, as close to 15 meters, ran it all over the place, and we had one guy got wounded out of that whole thing, and we got out of there next morning. Nothing, but yes,
So during your time in Vietnam, were you or any of the people you were serving with exposed to chemical warfare, specifically any actions involving napalm or perhaps something referred to as Agent Orange that you may have heard of?
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with the Agent Orange. I watched them spread it. Didn't know at the time what that was about or anything like that, but I was a case on. I remember watching them put the Agent Orange or defoliage down, and like the next morning it was just like everything was gone. And the thing was, we ended up going out the following afternoon on operation, and we were in that same area drinking water. And fortunately, I haven't had any problems with it, but I know a lot of people that do. My brother, who was in Vietnam also, had, in fact, he's like almost legally blind now because of it. He's had heart problems, a number of things, and then his children has had some problems also. So, yeah, and it impacted his life. So, and I know several other guys from the veterans that I know of that have it also. The napalm, I've seen it used. Obviously, I didn't have anything directly to use it with, but oftentimes when it was dropped, it was used as more of a marker. So we could tell, say like if I'm using fixed wings, because they're called, call them in, they will drop a marker, and of course, as you can imagine, that the explosion of white phosphorus or napalm, excuse me, it's white phosphorus, I'm thinking of. Anyway, they use that for the marker. The napalm, I've seen it dropped, and I've seen people who were burnt pretty bad. And the bad thing about it is it's almost impossible to put out unless you can stop the oxygen from getting to it. Otherwise, and that isn't water, that's like mud, something like that. Otherwise, you just got these pellets and they just burn right through you. They don't stop. So, yeah, it's a horrible thing, actually.
And if you... did you ever communicate with any of the Viet Cong, either through like an interrogation or any situation which you know of?
Yeah, but I was one of the people who went through the Vietnamese language school, and so part of that was there was an enemy capture, a suspect enemy, that interrogation, would be involved. The problem was my vocabulary was pretty limited. Some guys are good with languages, and mine wasn't. I thought, hey, that's great. I think I'll go to school because I'll be out of the field. I won't have to be up all night. So I had 2 weeks in a school. So 2 weeks you can cram it down as quickly as you can, and whatever you get, you get. So I could say hello, goodbye, and a couple other words, and that's pretty much it. So, but I did see, as a result of that, your question is interrogations. Yeah, I've seen several interrogations. Yeah, so.
Referring back slowly to the Agent Orange question, Don.
Okay.
Do you think the effect that this chemical had on the crops was worth the trade-off of the effects it has had on the soldiers, including those who are still with us today?
I don't. I mean, it was outlawed already in this country. Basically, they weren't supposed to be using it. They used this back in Korea. I had an uncle, one that actually is in Air Force or Air Corps. I don't remember what it was at the time, but he loaded the Agent Orange up on the airplanes that they were going to use. And if you've seen what happened to Vietnam, and you've seen what happened to all these guys that were exposed to this stuff, that's had a nasty impact on, I don't know that it made a lot of sense. That's all said and done.
I see. And what was the general attitude of the GIs on the conflict once they really were on the ground and they'd had enough time there to understand what was going on?
Well, what's interesting is because of being over there twice, but the fact is that I came home, was medevaced out in June of '67, and then I returned in, I think it was October of '67. So it didn't seem like a lot of space, but I noticed the difference between people that in that first day, because it was early in the war and everything. There hadn't been much resistance to it or anything, and people were a little bit more kind of gun-ho with thinking him over, but then it gets in the kind of thing like, let's just get home. And the guys that came, I think on my second tour, you started seeing guys that were objected to the war, that had been drafted and were hostile to the war. But I didn't have any problems with them, but they were just like, this is just not right. We shouldn't be here, And, but, they did their job.
I see. And while you were there any rumors or considerations of using nuclear weapons in Vietnam that you were aware of?
No, when I was there, no. I mean, I heard about it later on, but which really was kind of shocked me because the place that they were talking about using it was, I had been there, and then was thinking about Hue. Just before I went to Hue, that's where I came from, was Quezon. And there was a huge amount, I think it was like 20,000, 25,000 North Vietnamese there. And somebody was thinking that might be a fair trade-off, killing about 5,000 or 6,000 men and getting all them. Of course, there's no guarantees either. That's what would happen.
Did you have any sense of the progress of the war while you were in country, or of the political or social shifts that occurred while you were away from stateside?
Not so much. I mean, it's. I guess that's when I came back to the States the first time. It was such a shock because everything had changed so much, and I don't know. People just never talked about it over there, and really, the only stuff you were getting as far as kind of news or anything came through the armed forces. So that was all kind of cleaned up and edited and everything like that before it got there. So it's like you would hear guys talk about it sometimes, but it was just kind of hard to imagine it. Well, they say, oh, in San Francisco, so oh yeah, a bunch of nuts there, whatever, So, but it wasn't like that anywhere else, supposedly, So.
And do you feel you had any innate disadvantages, you or your comrades, while you were in the conflict in Vietnam?
Well, there was always the issue. I think when I first went over, the first thing that just made me scratch my head was I was going out on patrol, and we were told immediately is to have no round in the chamber of the weapon, and your weapon had to be on safety, had to be on. And before we, unless we were fired upon, if there was a situation that might require us to fire, we had to call back and get permission. And that's a heck of a way to try to run a war. So it was just right there. You could see there was some political stuff going on, trying to guide this war and everything. And I don't know. I mean, I probably learned more stuff after the war than I did during the war. I mean, it was like the biggest thing is like a lot of times, like, why are we out in the field so much? Why doesn't somebody else come out here and let us go back, for a week or something to get a break, And we just happened to be our turn in the barrel, I guess, and couldn't get out.
So can you tell us about your experience at home when you were in between services, and what made you think of returning to Vietnam?
Long story short, when I came out of Vietnam, I was medevaced out. I had a basically post-traumatic stress, and I didn't know that's what it was, called combat fatigue. And I experienced, to this day, in '67 for 6 months, I cannot tell you what happened. I just know I was there, except for one event, and it was just before I left. And I remember we had come in, we were standing in the chow line. I know I was getting short. In fact, it was like I was within a week or so being taken out of the field altogether, and 2 weeks from going home. And I'm standing there, all of us, and plane flies overhead, and we see this guy jump out. And right behind him, another guy jumps, but he jumped too quick, and he went right into his chute. Both the guys came down, crashed into the ground. And I remember we all just dropped our, mess gear and ran up there to, we were thinking like maybe we could help or something. These guys were dead when they hit the ground. But, we ran up there, and it was like everything was just not real or anything. I was kind of floating, and it's just like disassociation or whatever. And I just like, what's going on here, And it was just like, And I'd been in Vietnam for, right then, over 18 months, and I can't remember any time I've really ever lost it. And this was probably the closest I think I came. I went back to somebody said, you need to get back to the tent. This is after it's all, because I see them guys laying there and everything, and they were messed up bad. And there must have been something on my face or something like that. But so I went back to the tent. I said, yeah, man, I don't think I'll lay down. I said, something's wrong, man. So I went back to the tent, and then they came in and got me, and I went to see the first sergeant. He talked to me and everything, and he says, I want you to go up to see the corpsman, or the medical people. So I went up there, and I started doing a test, and he was talking to me, and, how things are going and everything, and they started doing this test to see kind of more, I don't know, anxiety level or something like that, They had you touching your nose and I don't know, whatever it says, and everything. But it was like I was sitting there and just like everything that I'd seen and happened and everything for the last like 18 months or 19 months, I just all of a sudden just like, blah. And I just, tears just gushing out of me. And I was just like uncontrollably sobbing. Wasn't anything anybody said or anything. It was just like all of a sudden it's like somebody turned it on. I couldn't get it off. So they told me to go down to Da Nang, China Beach. So you take a couple of days off and you come back, we'll have your orders to go back to the States. And I said, oh, okay. So I went down there, I got down there. It's a close friend of mine I ran into, was with the other company I was with in 19. And there was a guy there by the name of Troy, felt pretty close to. Because I didn't see him until he came in around July. I'd been shot already. I'd seen a bunch of crap already, and I was just like, man, it's insane over here. But he's from the South. He's from Georgia. Had real good, just could tell a story, make you laugh and stuff like that. And it was kind of the kind of pill I needed at the time. And he kind of helped me get along, and we were talking about, man, after everything's over, we were all going back at the same time since I extended and everything, and man, we got to get together down in Macon, Georgia, and man, we're talking about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and everything like that. And this friend I seen, who just came from there, and he was kind of unusual looking, because usually if you're coming down to go home or you're going off on R&R, you usually have showered and you got a clean fatigues on, and this guy looked like he just came out of a firefight or something. He did. And he just looked like a mess and everything. And asked me how he was doing and everything, and then he says, oh, I was doing all right. And he said, who you with now? And I said, 3-9 everything, my company. He said, man, he said, I heard you guys really getting a bunch of crap. And to this day, I can't remember if we did or we didn't or anything like that. It's just not there. And I said, I don't know what I said or something like that. And I said, well, so how you guys doing, man? And he says, oh, you didn't hear? I said, no. I said, well, we lost about 125 guys in the company, or in the battalion. And he said, I survived, and George's all right, but he got shot up pretty bad. It's kind of a friend of mine and his. And he said, Troy was killed. And just melted down right there. And I ended up in the hospital, and I ended up going back. And the time, as far as treating PTSD or anything like that, there really was. They just throw you in a drunk tank. I mean, literally, that's what it was. People who had problems with drug or alcohol, they just threw you all in together and everything like that. So I was in there for 2 months. I'm not sure. I mean, everything was just kind of a big kind of going around in my head and everything. I'm not sure what to see. I'd never seen anybody. It's just like I was there long enough and they were giving some medication. I said, okay, you can go now. After 2 months, And I tried to get a hold of my friend's parents, and I called them up and everything, and I told them who I was, and I knew him and everything like that, but I just couldn't, go on. So I got back to the camp, got my orders to go to Camp Lejeune, and I don't know, there's just a bunch between what happened over there, my friend, and then there was this whole thing with the black nationalist movement was going on with the civil rights and stuff. I mean, it's like I didn't see any of that before I went over there. When I come back, guys were talking about stealing 106s and stuff like that because they were going to take the government over and stuff like that, And it was like, what? Or somebody, they broke into the armory last night, and we lost this and this and this. And so I thought, man, this is insane, And it was different. It was real different. And the world, I mean, where there were no drugs or didn't know about them that much, then there was all of a sudden all kinds of drugs. Music had changed. I mean, it was just like in a matter of 18 months, the whole world just turned upside down. And I went in the next morning after I got into the camp. And I was riding on a bus down there too, and I went through Carolinas and stuff. And I don't know how it is now, but at that time, those people down there looked like it was as bad as Vietnam. They had mules and they had oxen or whatever. They were pulling plow with it, that kind of thing. This is like in 1967, So it's just like, man, this isn't any better than where I was at. So I don't know. I was just like, I'm out of here, So I signed a waiver and I went back. Probably shouldn't have, but I did,
I see. All right, so we're going to skip ahead slightly to the post-war section just for time's sake. I'll begin by asking you, what sort of support did you receive from the government when you returned to stateside, if any?
What? I'm sorry?
You returned stateside. What sort of support was there available to you?
Support, okay. I didn't hear that, yeah, pretty much nothing. I mean, I got, it kind of pissed me off. I remember getting back and they're going to get you lined up for your pay, and sit you out there. And at that time, if you had less than a year to go, they were going ahead and discharging you. So I come back and everything. My hair was a little bit longer than they thought it should have been. So they told me they weren't going to give me my paycheck until I cut my hair, my travel pay. And my hair was, there's nobody in here who's got hair as short as mine was at the time. But it was like, I can't believe this. I just spent 3 years in Vietnam. And you're making a big deal over this. And so I went on back home. I had an opportunity to go down to St. Louis to take, it's just like an exit physical, see if you're available for any veteran benefit or anything like that. And I didn't care to do it, so I didn't. I don't know that's necessarily the government's fault, but there was nothing I felt they had I wanted at that time.
I see. What sort of reception did you receive from old friends or peers or your family even when you returned to the U.S. for the final time?
My family, I think my mother was afraid of me. My brothers were glad to see me. Peers, they acted kind of stupid. I mean, it was the same old question that gets asked. If anybody's ever been in a war, the first question, I don't care if you're in the Desert Wars, you're in Korean War, whatever. How many people did you kill? Did you kill any kids? It's always about, I swear, it's the first question out of people's mind. I didn't want to see them. I just, I didn't have any interest sitting around talking about that. And then at the same time, what was going on over the media with the anti-war protests and everything like that, I was like a lot of veterans, I just kind of disappeared into the wall. It's like, you know what? I don't want nothing to do with it. And
I see. Have you seen any Vietnam War films made since the war? And if you have, do you think the representations put in there were accurate?
Well, I tell you what, I seen one. I was really skeptical about going. Probably about a year after I got back, something like that. Deer hunter. and I couldn't deal with it. And then after I got into some treatment with the veterans, it's kind of strange how you do that. I never went and seen another one. Then, although my daughter tricked me one time, one of my daughters, and they didn't mean to trick me. They went and they heard this was a great film, 4th of July, and she put it on. I had no idea what it was about. We're sitting down there watching it, and that scene where it comes to right off the bat, where there's you can hear the firing, and he gets shot. You know, he ends up losing his legs as a result of it and everything like that. But the sound was so realistic. I mean, my body just shuddered. And before I got upstairs, I was just bawling. It was just like I was back there, and just like I just was back there. I could feel the heat from the fields and the houses burning and everything else. I mean, it was just like I was there. And I just told her, she came upstairs after I didn't come back down. I said, no, I just can't watch that. I just can't watch it. She said, we can fast forward it. It won't be so bad. I said, I don't think there's anything on there I want to see. He said, it's just that. That's all. I've seen the whole thing. It's just this little bit. It's over now. You know? But I seen it later, and it didn't make me feel any better. After I went into the Veterans Hospital, and I've been working on post-traumatic stress for the last, it's been over 10 years, 11 years, something like that. And the thing is, I would stay away from them things, but there came a point where it's like I wanted to go back and see what people really thought. I thought there were some good movies out. I think some of them that were, because I talked to other veterans about them, and I think some of them were misunderstood. For example, the Apocalypse Now. I mean, it was just kind of a whole conglomerate of thoughts about the war and everything like that. It wasn't a Pacific person. It wasn't supposed to be true as much as it was to get people to think about why we, ask the question, why were we there? All these other people been there, made mistakes and everything, and they didn't seem to win it. So why were we there? And but anyway, and I seen The Deer Hunter again, and I think the second time I seen it, it was hard. It wasn't. I mean, it's always hard to see somebody like for me getting shot or something like that. But I think the hardest thing was the treatment, just like in the 4th of July. It was just the way those people were treated at the veterans place, because that's the place you think you can trust them. You think, hey, if I go over there because I got this problem, lost a leg or something like that, they're going to take care of me. And that wasn't always the case.
I see. Touching back briefly on what you said earlier, if you don't mind commenting, why do you believe your mother was afraid of you after you returned?
Oh, just, I don't know. My mother was a child of World War II and Korea. The people who went to World War II were classmates. Might even knew some people from, let's see, 20, maybe not. Maybe knew some people from World War I, because when she was in high school, it was like 41 to 45. I don't know, but I think it had an impact on her. And I think because I went back again, especially after I had been sent back for combat fatigue and stuff, and man, you got to be crazy. Why would you go back? I mean, she didn't understand it at all. I don't know that I understood any better than she did. But the one thing I understood later, as a parent, and what my mother had to do with this, it's hard enough for you to go over there and get through that, but it's a lot harder on a parent. And I found that out as a parent, that when your children leave, it's hard. But when they go to a war or something, I can't even imagine living through that. In fact, before all the equal rights stuff and everything like that, for women and all that, the biggest fear I was going to have, that women would have equal rights and they'd be able to go to war. So I had 4 daughters. I didn't want them to go. I didn't want them to see what I experienced, or experience what I experienced. And the nice thing about having 4 daughters, before that they were talking about passing that bill and everything else, was I didn't have to worry about that. So then I had one that went into the Navy. So
can you comment and possibly explain exactly what you know about PTSD, and when did you find out that this post-traumatic stress disorder was a part of your life?
Well, PTSD is just real quickly is a term. It's like an umbrella. I mean, post-traumatic stress, but it usually consists of things such as hypervigilance, depression, anxiety, things like that. That they kind of put under that. If you have so many of these things, then you're suffering from post-traumatic stress. And about 12 years ago, just like my whole life, just all of a sudden seemed to come apart. And I didn't have any, I guess it's been longer than 12 years now, but I didn't have any answers for it. I didn't understand it, but I kind of got to the point where I knew if I didn't talk to somebody that I was going to do something I'd regret, because I was flying off the handle over nothing. I had a lot of rage and anger, and part of the problem with that was that I could get physical really quick. And it wasn't any guarantee that I'd be all right. I mean, it's just, no matter what, somebody was going to get hurt, whether it was me or them or both. But the thing was, I realized that, I can't go on like this. And also, I guess it was just, I was having flashbacks heavier. I don't know. And I had somebody come up to me. I was living in South Bend, Indiana at the time, and a friend of mine who was in the Army in Vietnam, and he suggested, he was talking to me, and he says, I noticed that. I didn't know, but I said, I didn't, unless you said something. And he says, I can tell, because he showed me this picture of a photography or photos from the Vietnam, and one of these big picture, one of these big type of books that you put on your coffee table, whatever. Anyway, I just looked at this one picture, and I was just like, all of a sudden, just like, and again, I was having a serious flashback and everything, and so he was talking to me, and I only heard one thing, and that was like, there's a good chance you have whatever it was he was talking about, but he said you can get free counseling through the VA. It won't cost you a penny. There's a guy that's going to come in here, since you're a veteran, he'll sit down, give you a short interview. If the interview says that you qualify, then you'll get help at no cost to you. And so I said, yeah, man. He gave me a phone number to call, and I called it that day. And got appointment. I got in and everything, and I started off working in Battle Creek. There's a hospital over there, outpatient, inpatient. It was like you're carrying this stuff inside of you all these years. And I think it was best described as it's like having something horrible to you. You know it happened to you. You know it was true, but you can never say anything about it. And it's just eating you up inside. And you don't know who to talk to about it. Because everybody around you, nobody really knows what you would be talking about. And so just the opportunity to sit down and talk about it. And then just as more I got involved in it, I found out I had some pretty serious issues. And so, like I said, I put my kind of nose to the grindstone, you might say, and started working on it for, like I said, it's been over 10 years now. And it's helped me a lot. I mean, my biggest objective when I got in and I started realizing, I said, it was like I can get myself calmed down, but what I want is a better relationship with my children and grandchildren to come, my family. I mean, that was more important to me than anything else. And my wife. And it's just like I knew I had a hard time talking with people. I couldn't listen. I got just a lot of problems. So that's the training and stuff that you go through and classes and everything like that. It has a lot to do with, learning how to communicate, how to look at yourself, how to take ownership. It's not like you can't. People can't do things to you, but it's more about like, am I going to let them control me? And taking proper medication and stuff like that, and get yourself in a better place, And I honestly say when I went in there and then went out to North Chicago, it probably saved my life. Because I've known guys at the veterans place that just hadn't been as far as just taking their life, and or tried to take it, and I mean it's hard to write out. I mean, at some point, I don't care how committed you are to life. At some point, when you start getting into severe depression and stuff, it's like you don't see nothing except a big black hole. It's like you're lost in a big ocean of darkness. You see no way out or nothing. There's no exits. There's no nothing, and no hope, basically. So I was, and I mean, this is a thing that I would say as far as the Veterans Administration. I know there's been some problems people have said, but in my view, as far as my own personal experience, they've done a lot to make my healing, I might say, available to me. And that's the other part of it. I mean, they can put it out there, but unless you get out there and kind of work the program, do what you need to do and stuff, and start take an honest look at yourself, it doesn't mean anything. So I was glad I had that opportunity, and I still go. I don't leave it up to chance.
I see. All right, so for the last few minutes, is there anything you would like to add to this interview?
The only thing maybe is that there's so many things that we discussed and everything. I hope someday there's somebody, and I hope that this group or whoever sees this in the future, that they can look at it and realize that how horrible war really is. It's just not a story. It really impacts people, and it not only impacts them, everybody in their life. Because the post-traumatic stress, or if they end up double amputee or something like that, I mean, their lives are turned upside down. And I've never really met anybody that's went, that I know that's been out in the field and stuff like that doesn't have some problem, some more than others. But it impacts you. I mean, you can't help it. I mean, you wouldn't be human if it didn't. You can't see that kind of stuff and walk away and feel like, oh, I'm okay. But the reason I say that is because it's like this, whether it's now or anywhere, it's too easy for people to jump off and commit 50,000 troops here or there and not give it much thought. And I was talking about that one I called it The Winds of War. I meant it's The Fog of War by McNamara, Robert McNamara. And it's heartbreaking to me because it's like we made a mistake. But we knew we made a mistake when we made the mistake. We just didn't know how to get out of it. And that's like I was saying, it's too easy to play games with people, and for your own benefit or profits,
Fair enough.
So what part, or I suppose, what was the most different thing you noticed about society before you left for training and when you got back from the military? What had changed the most?
Well, I think it's their attitude towards the military, and I think it became so personal because it was the soldiers who most people were striking out at. I mean, if you came back from World War II or Korea or whatever, I don't think it was so personal. But the spitting or throwing blood on guys who were coming back, or chanting crazy stuff at them, it's insane. And it was just like, I don't know, it's somewhere, it seemed like everything just got lost. I mean, it wasn't like I remember when I left. Somewhere between Leave It to Beaver and, I don't know, some crazy show nowadays, that's just like, it was so dramatic. And part of that, when I say that, is the thing at that time was, I don't know, I guess at my young age, like I said, most of the writing or the anti-war stuff, and you see cities being burnt down, and all kinds of. It's just like whole country was just upside down,
I see. And did your personal views or philosophies just on life as a general item change after you returned home from the war? And if so, how was that?
I think before I went to the war, I was young and everything, and it's just like in cattle I'm talking about. I just kind of followed. It just they say go here, you go there, and you do it. I think after I got back, part of the uh, uh, protests and everything, I did start looking at things, for myself, and then that became kind of a twisted because there were so many conflicts, and part of that is the people I knew in Vietnam that died over there, like my friend I was talking about with Troy and some of these other guys and everything, and Tex and that. It's like uh, it was in a way. It's like it can't be wrong. It has to be right because if it wasn't, then they died for nothing. Their whole life was wasted for what? And in such a horrible place and so far away from home. And so that was a big thing for a long time with me. It's just like I had a hard time coming to grips with that. And but I did come to a place where I started reading more and venturing out and not just simply. I even had at one time a kind of personal philosophy that when I came back and before then, it was all about, everybody can take care of themselves and, this bootstrap, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and everything like that. And, opportunities there for everybody. I know somewhere along the line I started thinking about it and I think, this whole idea that they're trying to sell me that I could be president if I wanted to. There's only one president. And like right now, there's 300 million people in this country. Not likely. Everybody want to be a lawyer? Probably, unless you had certain education, certain skills, etc., and everything. You're probably not going to be real good at that. It's going to school for that, And it's the same thing. And where I got to the place where I understood, everybody has their lot in life. Not bad, not good, but everybody contributes to society. But why is it? And that's the question I started asking. The people that don't have much going for them, the guys that are sweeping the floors, that are working in the factories, basically, and things like that, are the ones over there bleeding or dying. And I'm not saying there isn't somebody that's doing all right that goes to war. But for the most cases, just like in Vietnam, how many of them guys like Bush and others that you look at that's, basically used his power, his family influence and everything like that to make sure he didn't go? And I'll tell you what, 65, the National Guards, that was almost, it was hard to get into. But as it went on, because people were using that, it was almost impossible to get into because National Guard isn't that big. At that time, National Guards did not do like they're doing today. They did not. Their job was here for floods and fires and etc. But there were a lot of people that chose to do nothing. But at the same time, in this whole political arena we have, like for nowadays, I see people like John McCain, and I'm not particularly a John McCain fan, but I do respect him as someone who was a pilot and a Navy and who was a prisoner of war that made it through and everything. But he runs from office and people are belittling him, his Republican opponent, because he's got medals and they don't. Because he talks about his war experience. Well, my God, you guys wouldn't be old enough, but if you go back, Eisenhower or anybody else that was running, John Kennedy or anybody like that, that was a part of your history. That was part of who you were. And now, it's like people make that sound bad. And so it's so political and it's so easy to manipulate people. And that's kind of where I've come to. The point is like, you just feel like you're just another kind of chess piece. And they send somebody off to get some more oil for them, you have no value, so we'll send you over there so I can get richer or something, And Yeah, so I mean, yeah, my thoughts have changed quite a bit since 17 years old, and I was heading to boot camp. And like I said, I had that strong determination and not quit and just kind of believe that I could do anything I wanted. And at some point, you start realizing, you know, you can do a lot of things, and you can push yourself and achieve more maybe than you think. But there are limits. I mean, when it really comes down to it. And I think as far as most of these guys, whether they're over in Desert Storm or Vietnam or whatever they were in, that's what it took to get through that. And there, to me, it isn't because somebody's walking around with a chest full of medals, because it depends who you're with. It depends who your officers are, etc., whether you get pinned a badge on you or not. I mean, the fact is that you survived. You went out on the ambushes, you did your job and everything like that. To me, hey, you know what? And to me, they're all heroes as far as the veterans. They're just, and unfortunately, this becomes such a, I don't know, almost a political slogan now, And that was another thing for me. It was hard to understand when people started talking about, like, oh, this guy's coming back from Iran and stuff like that, or Iraq, I mean. And it's like, why did you treat us like that? Now, these guys are pretty good. I mean, we could, and actually, there's records where guys literally that came back from Vietnam, they would put an application in, and they would code it to make sure they didn't get a job. And he went through, and I wasn't that unfortunate, but there were a lot of guys that they had to go through that. And if you add color on top of it, you got a real problem, So.
I see. And were you able to support any vets or offered advice to any other veterans since you've been stateside and since you've retired from military activity?
Are there any events?
Have you been able to support or offer advice to any other veterans who have returned from more recent wars?
I have, yeah. I have. I got a cup at home that I carry around, especially when I'm traveling or anything like that. It's got a Marine Corps emblem on it. It's from a guy that gave it to me. That I knew him for about 2 days, but he gave it to me as soon as he met me. And the only reason is because he had been at North Chicago Hospital. And he was just coming out of there, and he'd heard things about me and stuff like that, which I kind of felt pretty honored that he would do that. But I had guys that I talked to over the phone, I kind of keep connected with and everything, especially the younger guys. They know more now today, but it's still very difficult for a person to walk in and say, I need help. That's the hard thing, because I'll be honest with you, they could have had the finest program in the world, but it's just like I said, with that kind of attitude I had and everything, it's like, I don't need help. I can take care of myself. The rest of them guys, I don't know what's wrong with them. I got a job. I don't know what's wrong with them. And it wasn't until later on in life that I started realizing just, that not everybody was as fortunate as I was when they came back.
And speaking of when you came back and you chose to receive the help you needed, or you chose you needed, can you comment on your use of art as therapy?
Yeah. When I first started doing art, I had been in a couple of counseling sessions, which were fine. If I was talking about a family member, if I was talking about, whatever. But if I started talking about the war, I was just like, man, I just couldn't get it out. And so, I don't know, I just sit down one day, I was standing nothing else to do, and I started messing around. Actually, I was out on the road. One of the things I did when everything started coming apart, I just kind of took off. I was gone. I was on the road pretty much all the time. But I had this art pad, and I just started messing around with it. I don't know why I got it or when I got it or anything like that, but it was like with crayons and water paints and whatever I could get on there and everything. And I started realizing, I thought this thing I started remembering about the fact the story I was telling you just as a minute ago about Tex and him calling about his mom and everything. And I did this whole sketch on that and everything. And so when I sat down with the therapist the next time, I kind of handed it to her, and I said, I did this, and so we started just kind of taking it slow and walking through it and everything like that. And it was helpful to kind of be a catalyst to start getting this out and to process it and everything. But it also serves as my own well-being right now, because painting is something I like to do. It keeps my mind off of the war and stuff like that, so it isn't there all the time. And it's very calming to me and relaxing. Now, I'm not a good painter, but it's, you're all Sickler's level, you can get.
Do you personally take pride in your service, both in the military and assisting those outside of the military?
Depends on what day you ask me. I can always say this, in all honesty, that when I went in there, I went in with all good intents. And so I think in that way I could say, I was an honorable person. The only thing I would ever question is some of the things that I've seen at some point. I question myself later on, should I have tried to do something? Or more than what I did, to bring it to the awareness of someone else. I don't even know what that would have been. But, and so I think that's part of the therapy too, is just kind of trying to release that and, trying to understand, that you can't take the burden of the whole world on yourself. There's some things that happen that really, said and done, there's really probably nobody that was listening. I didn't have a camera or anything like that to where, to put it out in front of anybody. And so I'm thinking, if I would have been against my fellow Marines, would I walked out of there? I don't know. In all honesty, if they thought I was going to, go back and talk about this or something, and put a finger on somebody or fingers, what kind of results, is that? So it's still, it's kind of the rationale now that I understand that, well, okay, there's that, and, but it's still just hard to kind of give it up. And I don't know what I expect, and I'm hoping someday it'll just be gone, yeah.
And can you say that you gained, in whatever sense the word you liked, from your military service?
I don't know. I really don't. When I came out, I was so messed up and everything. After 3 years and everything I went through, the one thing I didn't mention, after I had been back home for approximately 4 or 5 months, I went up to the recruiting station to try to go back into Vietnam, sign up. And they said, nah, not going to do it. They're cutting the forces and stuff like that. And then I started thinking about mercenaries. So it's like, that's where my thinking was. That's how bad it had gotten. And something about between being involved like that. I tell you what, you just talk. I don't know if anybody's seen this or not. I assume I've seen you not, but the deer hunter. One of the things that a lot of people kind of miss in that. You remember the big kind of scene that he's sitting there and they're playing the Chinese or Vietnamese roulette, Russian roulette, whatever. And now, see what that meant to me was he was trying to help his friend, but there's another side of it. He liked that being on the edge, even to the point that he knew someday that he was going to shoot himself, kill himself. And at some point, I remember when I came back the last time, because I had signed up before I actually got out. I'd signed up for another extension, and somebody asked me something after I'd signed up, and they said, "Man, did you sign up again?" I said, "Yeah." And their comment was, "Do you want to die or something?" I really never thought about it one way or the other. I thought about it that night, and that next morning I went in and I seen the clerk, and I said, "Man, have you filed that paperwork yet?" He says, "No." I said, because if I change my mind, could you tear it up? He says, it's torn up right now. He says, here it is. He said, I'm glad you're going home. That's where you should be. But it just does things to you, you know. I mean, it's a mixture. It's so complex because of the adrenaline that you feel all the time. And I mean, you know, when you're in a war zone, you're on an adrenaline high from day one to the day you leave. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, it's like all of a sudden everything is dull, everything's flat. I mean, you know, you're not looking over your shoulder. You're not trying to outdo somebody or anything like that. Somebody's trying to outdo you, you know. So, and you don't realize that a lot of times.
What do you think have been some of the best moments of your life since your service?
Best moments of my life? Well, I would say the birth of my children and my grandchildren, you know. And the ones that got married, their weddings. So, you know.
Well, in that case, since we have no more questions, I'd like to say thank you very much, Mr. Lim,
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Yeah.
It's been an honor talking to you.
Okay.
We'll
Welcome.
send you a copy of this if you'd like to have a look when we're done.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
So if it does go to Hollywood, I'd like some share of the royalties.
We'll make sure they sign it.
I think I signed a waiver on it or something. Thanks a lot.